Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into a really difficult topic.
Yeah, very complex.
Teacher-student interactions that, well, they cross lines, big ones, professional, legal.
And you, our listener, brought us quite a mix of sources on this. We've got news reports, some legal takes, even personal reflections.
Right. So the mission today is to look past the headlines, really try to understand what's actually going on in these very sensitive situations.
And what jumps out right away from the material is just how many layers there are to this. It's not simple.
Not at all.
We've got active court cases, legal experts weighing in, broader discussions about the whole context, so we can really sort of dig in.
Exactly. So to make sense of it all, we're going to focus on a few specific cases. First up, Lillian McMillan. She's an English teacher in Louisiana, arrested for alleged prohibited sexual conduct with a student.
Okay.
We've got Long Crime Network reports on that, KSLA News too. Then, Christina Farmella. She's a special ed teacher in Illinois, accused of a relationship with a 15-year-old.
Right, and for that one, we have some YouTube transcripts, citizen journalists, legal analysis channels, plus our own notes, so lots of different angles there.
Yeah, trying to piece together the evidence and the different viewpoints. Then, two more recent ones from Registry reform.
Okay.
Kirsten Raines in Kentucky, accused of showing nude photos to a student and also exchanging them with another teacher.
Wow, okay.
And Emily Nutley, an Ohio school official. She actually pleaded guilty to sexual battery of a student.
Guilty plea, right. And we have news and legal commentary on those two. Details on charges, please. Sentencing, Ohio law.
Exactly. Plus, a quick mention from Law and Crime about another case in Bossier, Louisiana, a teacher coach, indecent behavior with a juvenile, just for, comparison. And there's this one source, just a short, sharp question. Did McMillan think she and the student were having a relationship? What's perspective here? Really gets you thinking.
That hits a key point, doesn't it? The perception versus reality in these power dynamics.
Totally. And then we broaden out with that registry reform video, the whole hot for teacher dynamic.
Yes. Looking at news, Reddit threads, expert opinions, the whole spectrum from, innocent crushes to actual criminal behavior. Erica Matson's case in Florida comes up there, too.
Right. And finally, some essential info from Louisiana State Police and the law offices of Ozzie Brown. Sex offender registration, the tier system in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Directly relevant to McMillan.
Okay, so that gives us the legal framework for that case.
So for you, the learner, the goal is clarity, structure. We want to balance the case specifics with the bigger legal, ethical stuff. Point out the surprising bits, those aha moments.
Without it being overwhelming. And touching on the psychology, the societal stuff, too.
Right. Okay, let's unpack it, starting with Lillian McMillan in Shreveport.
Okay, so the Law and Crime and KSLA reports. What's striking first is how fast the school, Evangel Christian Academy, acted.
Yeah, Pastor Denny Duran said they called authorities right away as soon as they got a report.
Which is what they're supposed to do, mandatory reporters. McMillan was hired just last summer, had a background check.
Clear background check, yeah.
And they released her immediately, cooperating with authorities, standing by victims. It shows how seriously schools are expected to take this.
Absolutely. So McMillan, English teacher, arrested for one count of prohibited sexual conduct, educator and student. Police went to her home after a sexual assault report.
Right. Initial interview, then another one the next day, then the arrest.
But what's interesting, or maybe typical, is how few specifics are public at this stage.
Yeah, that's common. They're careful. Protect the investigation, protect the people involved. We don't know the alleged victim's details, age, gender, if they were her student.
Or when or where this supposedly happened, or if there's more than one alleged victim.
Exactly. All still unclear.
We do know a little about McMillan. Goes by Lily on social media. Also runs a photography business. Lifestyle weddings.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for 6 years. The business focuses on, quote, capturing love and tons of laughter. Real moments you will cherish forever.
Wow. That's quite a contrast to the charges. Stark.
Isn't it? And it brings up that question from our source.
Did she think they were having a relationship?
Yeah. What was her perspective? Because that psychological element, that potential disconnect in perception, it seems to pop up a lot.
It really does. The adults' view versus the students, filtered through that power imbalance. We'll probably see that again.
Florina Al Schiller, the lawyer on Law and Crime, she really hammered that power imbalance point.
A criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor.
She talked about teachers potentially, grooming, isolating, abusing a child. And she was clear. There's no such thing as consent when we're talking about children in this kind of situation.
That's the bottom line, legally and ethically. No consent possible there.
She also laid out the typical investigation process, interviewing the child, parents, classmates, school staff.
And crucially, looking at digital evidence. Social media, texts, any inappropriate contact outside school or unsupervised contact inside school.
Right. Checking for anything that backs up the story. Maybe even admissions from the teacher.
Corroboration is key.
And that digital evidence piece. Schiller really stressed how important texts, social media messages, even surveillance video can be.
Absolutely vital. We'll see that again, I'm sure. Digital footprints.
Yeah. Schiller also mentioned the school's potential liability.
Ah, yes. Civil suits, negligent hiring, negligent retention, supervision.
Did they do a thorough background check? Were there earlier red flags?
Yeah.
How much supervision was there really? Those kinds of questions.
All things that could come up if someone sues the school.
It was pretty sobering hearing Schiller talk about trends she sees. Often younger female teachers, early 20s, often married, like Macmillan reportedly is.
Interesting. Any theories why?
She speculated maybe more students feel okay reporting now, and maybe teachers getting too casual with students via social media, blurring those lines.
That makes sense. Social media can create this false closeness, break down those professional barriers if you're not careful.
Definitely. So, legally for Macmillan, Schiller said it's hard to predict indictment yet. Too little info. DA's office will review everything.
Right. And if it goes to a grand jury, the alleged victim likely has to testify, which is tough.
Incredibly tough. Schiller emphasized how varied victim reactions can be. Depends on the person, their support, past trauma. But the focus has to be their children, their victims. Gender doesn't matter.
Absolutely. The focus must be on the victim's experience and protection.
Schiller also said plea offers are common, especially for first offenders, often probation, but way too early to tell for Macmillan.
Right. Speculation at this point.
Her advice for parents, though, be vigilant. Kids' social media, phones, who they're talking to, especially adults in power positions.
Good advice. Essential. And Macmillan was still in jail when that report aired.
Right. Now, connecting this to the Louisiana Sex Offender Registry, that info from Ossie Brown's office and the state police is key.
Okay. So, prohibited sexual conduct between educator and student, RS 14.81.4. Where does that fall?
It's a Tier 1 sex offense in Louisiana.
Tier 1. Okay, what does that mean practically?
Tier 1 is lowest risk, requires registration for 15 years, and they have to report annually to local authorities.
15 years, okay. And tiers 2 and 3?
Tier 2 is moderate risk, 25-year registration, also annual reporting. Tier 3 is high-risk lifetime registration, more frequent check-ins, and community notification.
Got it. So Tier 1 is serious, but less stringent than 2 or 3. Still, 15 years is a long time.
And even Tier 1 can mean restrictions on where you live or work, plus not complying with registration, fines, more jail time.
Right. So if Macmillan is convicted, that Tier 1 registration is likely part of the sentence, on top of any jail time. It shows how seriously the law takes this specific offense.
Definitely. Okay, let's shift gears to Christina Formella in Illinois. This one, there's a lot more information out there, partly from those citizen journalist channels and court documents.
Yeah, the Formella case is interesting because of that online coverage. YouTube channels like Plunder, Registry Reform. It's a more immediate, maybe less filtered reaction compared to traditional legal analysis.
Right. Formella, special ed teacher, South Downers Grove High, accused of an inappropriate relationship with a 15-year-old student. And she was his tutor and soccer coach.
Positions of trust. Significant trust.
Her arrest, March 16th, 2025. Seems like it shocked people.
The body cam footage described in the commentary apparently showed her very distressed, hyperventilating, feeling sick.
And her husband, Michael's reaction. Is she going somewhere? Like, he had no idea.
If that's accurate, yeah, suggests he was out of the loop, which raises its own questions.
Especially since they'd only been married since August 2024. The alleged abuse started around December 2023, just a few months after the wedding.
Wow. And yet, online folks noted he was still supporting her at later court appearances.
Yeah. Which, people comment on. It's complex, that spousal support aspect in these cases. What do they know? Why stand by them? Hard to judge from outside.
True. Very complex personal dynamics.
The charges against her are really serious. Felony criminal sexual assault, 2 counts of aggravated criminal sexual assault.
Yeah, those carry heavy potential sentences.
At her first court appearance, April 14th, she pleaded not guilty. Judge made it clear. Mandatory attendance. Could even hold the trial without her, if she skipped.
Underscores the seriousness. What are the potential penalties again?
Criminal sexual assault, 4 to 15 years, 85% served. The aggravated counts. One is 15 years, 50% served. The other 3 to 7 years, 50% served.
So, yeah, significant potential prison time, a very real possibility.
Now, the evidence. This is where the digital stuff is huge. The student got a new phone. His mom accessed his cloud account, found texts between him and Christina.
The cloud backup, it keeps everything. Even if you change phones, what did the text say?
Pretty direct stuff, reportedly. Him calling her mama, saying, "I love you so much, mama." Her replying, "I love you so much, baby." And explicitly, "I love having sex with you."
Wow, mama. And that explicit line, that's incredibly strong evidence for the prosecution. Hard to explain that away as just mentoring.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Then there are Christina's own notes, found on her phone.
Okay. What did those say?
Well, first, she apparently claimed they were just about anxiety, and any mention of sex was about her husband.
Okay.
But later, her story reportedly changed. She accused the student of hacking her phone, planting the messages to blackmail her, denied knowing about them.
Whoa. That's a major shift. Claiming she wrote them for anxiety versus claiming she didn't know they existed and was hacked. That kind of inconsistency, not good for credibility.
Not at all. And the notes themselves, the reported content, gives a disturbing look into her mindset, or at least what she wrote down.
Like what?
Accusations at the student. "You're so effing predictable and disgusting. Shocker, you cheated on me with her." Claims she initiated every breakup. Accused him of gaslighting.
Gaslighting him.
Yeah. "I warned you we should have never started dating a long, long, long effing time ago, and you gaslit me and convinced me it was fine every single time."
Wow. Okay. That's putting a lot onto the teenager.
And then this line, "I'm effing mad that I let a 16-year-old F with me like that."
Yeah.
It almost flips the script, like she's the victim.
Which, given the power dynamic. Yeah, that completely ignores the teacher-student power imbalance. Very problematic framing.
And there were forward-looking bits, too, like, "We will never, ever be together again," but then right after, "I'm not a second choice, I'm the best thing you'll ever have."
A real mix of anger, regret, maybe possessiveness, turbulent stuff.
And these, like, manifestation notes from November 2024. "Blank is going to reach out to me soon. Blank and I will connect again soon in a positive way. We will be able to love each other while also living our own lives."
Manifestation notes. That seems to contradict her later claim of being stalked or wanting no contact. Suggests she wanted connection.
Exactly. These notes, wanting contact, really undermine the victim of unwanted attention narrative. The prosecution will likely focus heavily on these inconsistencies.
You'd think so. Big discrepancies there.
Now, the perspectives on the relationship itself. The student reportedly told police they developed feelings for each other.
Okay, so from his side, maybe it felt mutual, but again, that power dynamic. A 15-year-old's perception in that situation is heavily influenced by the adult's role. It can't be truly consensual.
Right. Meanwhile, Christina claimed she was being stalked, obsessed over, just because she was attractive.
But didn't she also reportedly admit knowing it was wrong, but couldn't stop because she cared too much?
Yeah, that was also reported, which it doesn't excuse anything, obviously, but maybe hints at her own emotional state, however wrong her actions were.
Still, the claim of being stalked, did she ever report it to the school, his mother?
Apparently not. Which does weaken that claim quite a bit. If you genuinely feel stalked, especially at school, you'd usually report it.
Yeah, the lack of reporting is telling. It makes the stalking claim harder to believe.
Plus, topless photos of the student were reportedly found on her phone, and she supposedly brought them up spontaneously in conversations with others.
Doesn't really fit the picture of someone being unwillingly pursued. Sounds more like ongoing engagement.
Right. More consistent with, well, an inappropriate relationship.
And the husband, Michael. He told detectives he knew nothing about the student, besides him playing soccer. Didn't go through her phone.
That's what was reported. Which, given how intense this alleged relationship sounds and living together, it seems remarkable he wouldn't know more.
It does seem surprising. Maybe lack of communication or choosing not to look too closely. Hard to say, but it's definitely a point people notice.
The legal experts on law and crime, they didn't mince words. Call the evidence remarkable. Her excuses borderline laughable.
Strong words.
And they kept stressing, these relationships are child abuse, period. Doesn't matter the teacher's gender. Power imbalance, minor involved, it's abuse.
That legal perspective is crucial. It cuts through the ambiguity. Vulnerable minor, breach of trust.
Unsurprisingly, her defense team objected to all the media coverage. Worried about harassment, tainting the jury pool.
Standard defense move in high-profile cases, trying to ensure a fair trial.
Prosecution had similar concerns, but focused on protecting the victim's privacy and well-being.
Right, it's always that balance. Public's right to know versus fair trial rights.
So summing up Formella. Serious charges, conflicting stories from her, notes that seem to contradict her claims, tough legal analysis. The core issues are the power dynamic, the age, the breach of trust. Whether they were in love is kind of beside the point legally and ethically.
Exactly. Her notes might show a messy internal state, but they don't change the fundamental legal reality of power, consent, and abuse in that context. The child abuse label from experts is pretty definitive.
It really is. Okay, let's move to Kirsten Raines in Kentucky, also concerning.
Right, the Raines case, showing nude photos to a student, but also the element of exchanging them with a male teacher colleague. That adds another layer.
Yeah. Raines, 25, Allen County High School, accused of showing nude photos to at least one student.
And the investigation found she was texting nude pics with another teacher there.
That's what was reported. And a student apparently saw those texts and photos on her phone and reported it.
Okay, what's her explanation?
She admitted sending photos to the other teacher. Suggested a student might have seen them accidentally, maybe on her sync laptop, or when kids used her phone for music. Denied intending for students to see them.
Denying intent, but even accidentally exposing minors to that kind of content. That's a huge lapse in judgment.
Absolutely. The superintendent confirmed she was put on leave immediately, pending investigation.
And the charges.
First offense, distribution of obscene matter to minors. She was released on bond. But it's early stages. Investigation ongoing. Could be more to come.
Right. Initial charges. But that detail about exchanging photos with another teacher, even separate from the student issue, that raises serious questions about professionalism and the school environment itself.
Totally. It suggests a potential lack of boundaries among staff, which maybe makes it easier for boundaries with students to blur too.
Could be a contributing factor. Definitely a red flag about the professional culture. Okay, now Emily Nutley in Ohio, that one's further along legally.
Yeah, Emily Nutley, Director of Academic Services, St. Xavier High in Cincinnati, an all-boys Catholic school. She pleaded guilty.
Guilty to what exactly?
2 counts of sexual battery, third-degree felonies in Ohio. 4 other counts were dropped as part of the plea deal.
Okay, plea deal. So she admitted to sexual conduct with a 17-year-old male student on specific dates.
Yes, November and December 2023. Admitted it. Common for plea deals to drop some charges to secure a conviction on others. Saves court time, guarantees an outcome.
Right. Prosecution gets a conviction, defense potentially limits the sentence.
The relationship, reportedly, started with texting after school in 2023. Escalated.
Yeah.
Nude photos, explicit messages into 2024. Then physical acts.
Including in her school office?
Allegedly, yes.
Yeah.
Sexual intercourse reported in her office at the school.
Wow. In the office. That pattern of escalation, digital to physical, it's depressingly common in these cases, and doing it at school just screams abuse of power.
Absolutely. The school did its own investigation, terminated her, then came the criminal investigation, and personally, big fallout. Husband filed for divorce once the charges hit the news.
Understandable. So sentencing is coming up June 10th. What's she facing?
Up to 10 years in prison, plus mandatory lifetime registration as a Tier 3 sex offender in Ohio, and a 1,000-foot restriction from schools.
Lifetime, Tier 3, that's incredibly significant, huge, life-altering consequences.
Mark Weaver, the former prosecutor, commenting on this, he really focused on that power dynamic, even with a 17-year-old.
Right. He mentioned Ohio law, section 2907.03, specifically about school employees and students. It basically says because of the power imbalance, there's no real consent possible. Teachers have a special duty to protect.
Yeah, and the prosecutor, Melissa Power, said Nutley preyed upon this student. Said Nutley kept texting him even after he tried to end contact, called her conduct completely unacceptable and reprehensible.
Strong words from the prosecution. The plea deal likely achieved their goals. Conviction on serious felonies, avoiding a trial, maybe sparing the victim from testifying.
Probably. And for the defense, maybe hoping for a lighter sentence than if she'd gone to trial and lost on all counts.
Makes sense. What did the school say?
Prosecutor relayed their view.
Yeah.
Isolated incident. But they encouraged anyone else with info to come forward. Standard institutional response, really.
Right. Acknowledge it, but contain it while inviting more info just in case.
The judge initially released her on her own recognizance.
Yeah, that seemed a bit surprising.
But later imposed a $30,000 cash bond, ankle monitor, no contact with the victim, maybe a reassessment of the seriousness or risk.
Seems likely. So for sentencing, the judge looks at a pre-sentence report, victim impact statements.
Right. And character witnesses for Nutley, probably, all weigh to decide, probation or prison.
And that Tier 3 registration is hanging over it all, lifetime. In Ohio, that means updating address with the sheriff every 90 days, community notified within 1,000 feet.
It's major. And there was that weird detail about her past social media, posting all about loving and supporting students.
Creates such a jarring contrast with the guilty plea, that disconnect between public persona and private actions.
Yeah. One source speculated the defense might try to frame it as just a bad decision, not child molester.
But the law is pretty specific, right? Ohio Revised Code 29907.903 covers teacher-student sexual battery, fits Tier 3. The label might be debated, but the legal classification seems clear.
Seems like it. And our sources mentioned another case briefly in Indiana, subsending nudes to a 14-year-old.
Just highlights it's not isolated, happens elsewhere.
And back to the Kentucky case, Kirsten Raines, exchanging nudes with a colleague. Even if not for students, it speaks to professional boundaries, the school environment.
Definitely. It raises concerns about the overall culture and standards among adults there, which can impact how student boundaries are maintained too.
Okay, so let's pull back now. Look at that broader context, the whole hot for teacher idea. That registry reform video had a lot in it.
Yeah, that one used a real mixed news, Reddit threads, articles, advice for parents.
Right, trying to capture that duality. Students having crushes, which can seem normal, versus the very real power issues, ethics, legality.
Their goal was exploring those blurry lines, psychology, different viewpoints. One Medium article they cited mentioned how teachers can seem appealing, intelligent, charismatic.
Like role models, authority figures. Psychologist Megan Rohr talked about that in the Hot for Teacher article, how teachers can almost be like celebrities to teens, maybe fill emotional needs.
But that Medium piece quickly countered that, right? Saying any romantic relationship exploits the power dynamic, blurs consent, potential for abuse.
Exactly. And it highlighted how messy the laws are, vary state to state, patchwork of rules, gray areas. But consequences, when lines are crossed legally, severe. Scandals, ruined reputations.
And the psychological side, too. Hard to tell innocent infatuation from something deeper problematic because of that power difference. Potential for long-term emotional damage is real.
The Hot for Teacher article itself acknowledged crushes are normal. Mike Hartford's anecdote about his intense crushes.
Right. And Rohr suggesting maybe it's even healthy. Helps teens understand admiration, provides role models. The advice for parents was key. Talk openly. Don't just scold.
But it also listed red flags for parents. Kid clams up about school, avoids a teacher, seems uncomfortable, mentions too much one-on-one attention.
And the teacher's responsibility, as Sudvich said, report anything concerning, don't ignore it.
Now that Gen Z perspective from the Wren's Reddit thread. Fascinating.
Overwhelmingly clear, wasn't it? Crushes happen, especially boys crushing on teachers.
Yeah.
But they must stay crushes. Teachers acting on it. Huge negative reaction.
Yeah, strong grasp of the power dynamic.
Yeah.
Anger about real cases where teachers crossed lines. Some felt it wasn't even labeled strongly enough, like calling it rape. Talking about hot teachers with friends is normal, but acting on it is cringy as fuck.
Yeah.
That quote sums it up.
Really does. High ethical standard expected from teachers. They acknowledged physical attraction happens, but stress the boundary. Mentioned student harassment towards teachers, too, shows it's complex.
The Standard article, Why Boys Fall in Love, looked at challenges young female teachers face. Student hormones, sometimes male colleagues behaving inappropriately, too. Teachers feeling objectified.
Psychologist Catherine Amboa framed it as adolescent development hormones, interest in sex, attention-seeking. But the article strongly disagreed that hormones excuse bad behavior. Adults must set boundaries, address harassment.
And then the Erica Manson case from Florida. Daily Mail, Long Crime covered it. Teacher 36 arrested. Alleged sex with an 18-year-old former student.
Former, but still at her school. She taught him in middle school.
Exactly. Charged was authority figure engaging in sexual conduct with a student.
And the timeline. Started when he was still a minor, messaging, flirting. Then sex after he turned 18, but was still a student there.
That's the allegation. Student provided photo evidence. Legal experts said even at 18, the prior relationship and power dynamic make it potentially criminal, harmful, breach of trust.
Makes sense. The power doesn't just vanish overnight when they turn 18, especially with that history.
Experts also talked about why we might see more female teacher cases reported now. More reporting generally, digital trails, changing social norms.
Plausible factors. The Madsen case really drives home that age of consent isn't the only factor when there's that kind of pre-existing power relationship.
Right, and the Our Psychology in Seattle thread brought up erotic transference, shaming adults who groom, not kids, for having feelings.
Yeah.
Using Juno as an example, safe conversations needed.
Distinguishing attraction from romantic feelings, therapy comparisons, some interesting anecdotes in there too.
Yeah, and then back to the legal framework. Louisiana State Police, Ozzie Brown's office.
The sex offender tiers.
Right, we covered it with McMillan. Tier 1 for educator student conduct, 15-year registration, annual reporting. Tier 2, 25 years. Tier 3, lifetime, more checks, community notification. It just reinforces the legal structure around these offenses. Even Tier 1 has serious long-term consequences.
Yeah.
Shows how seriously the law views these boundary violations.
Absolutely. It's not taken lightly.
So wrapping this up, it's clear this whole area is just incredibly complex, troubling, big consequences all around.
Yeah, looking back at the sources, you see that whole spectrum. Normal feelings, maybe on one end, serious alleged criminal acts on the other, but the constant, that power dynamic.
Always the power dynamic. It messes with consent, puts huge responsibility on the educator. We saw the contrast in Formilla's case notes versus claims. School responses varied. Generational views differ.
And the legal definitions, the sex offender registration, they really show how seriously these things are treated by the system. That Gen Z take was powerful too. Crushes, okay? Crossing the line, absolutely not. Strong ethical line there.
So for you, the learner, understanding this is vital. Interactions blur lines, online and off. Recognizing potential exploitation, even if feelings seem mutual. Critical takeaway. If you're in education or a parent, this deep dive hopefully gives a better grasp of the risks and responsibilities.
Which leads to that final thought, maybe. We know crushes happen. We know the power imbalance is real. So how do we create school environments that not only prevent these violations, but also help students develop the thinking skills, the emotional smarts, to navigate this stuff safely and ethically themselves?
That's a huge question. Requires ongoing talk schools, families, communities, clear rules consistently enforced, and ultimately, just an unwavering commitment to protect students, put their well-being first. Always.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.